I wish you bluebirds in the spring to hear your song, a song to sing, and then a kiss. More than this, I wish you love.
Welcome to the Forgiveness Solutions Podcast. I'm Reverend Misty Tyme. You can reach me at reverendmisty.com or send me an email and your forgiveness questions at revmisty@outlook.com. I would also love to get your forgiveness stories. Please send them to me. Also, the podcast is at Sacred Stories. Please subscribe. Today, we're going to talk about what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. I'm very excited to talk about this. Why? Because in my workshops and when I work with people one-on-one, and we're talking about forgiveness, what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not is the number one confused question. Society has really sent us some mixed messages. Before we talk about what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not, let's talk about unforgiveness. Why? Because that's what happens in the blink of an eye when somebody hurts us, whether it be a friend, a coworker, a sibling, a parent, or a spouse, a boyfriend, somebody. That is when we get angry, our feelings get hurt, and we get smoldering resentment. And that's when we pick up unforgiveness. And it's a choice. Yes, that's a choice. Even when it happens in a blink of an eye, it doesn't feel like a choice. It happens so quickly that all of a sudden we're mad or our feelings are hurt. It doesn't feel like that was a choice at all. And it was probably a very valid reaction to whatever the circumstance was. But it is a choice when we choose to hold on to it. Yep, that's unforgiveness. So that's when we're in a situation. That's the situation of needing to forgive. Well, all major religions talk about forgiveness, and society talks about forgiveness also. And there's even a study done on forgiveness. The Fetzer Institute in the Midwest, yes, there's people that actually study forgiveness. They looked at forgiveness, they look at love, they look at all those wonderful things. And they looked at forgiveness. They actually polled over 2,000 people. And good news for society. Out of those people, 67% said yes, forgiveness is a good idea. Don't ask me about the other 30%. We're not going to talk about them. So, out of those 67% that said forgiveness is a good idea, 60% of those people felt that they really needed an I'm sorry to be able to forgive. Well, that isn't a surprise. Why? Because our society is really geared to getting our just desserts, really finding out who's right, who's wrong, and then getting an I'm sorry, which is another way of saying you're right. And that is why forgiveness is really misunderstood. Personally, I went through a forgiveness situation. Heck, if you're over the age of 12, you probably have a forgiveness situation in your life at one time or another. My twin brother and I, went through my whole life with the guy. He and I didn't really get along. When we were adults, we really didn't get along. He was a difficult guy. He was a rageaholic. Pretty much, he was an alcoholic. He was that guy that you didn't want to show up at the family reunions. Because of that, I really had some unforgiveness issues. I pretty much have a lifelong reason to have those unforgiveness issues. And I was definitely looking for that I'm sorry. I guess I fell right into that Fetzer Institute. You'd think as a reverend, I would have had that down. I would have understand what forgiveness was. Well, I definitely could say I understood where God really had the forgiveness down. That forgive and forget, God definitely had it down. Especially in the Christian religion, the forgiving of your sins, the repentance, God forgives and forgets. More or less, don't repeat your sin. He really forgives and forgets. But when it came to human forgiveness, there needed to be some more work. So here I was, stuck in some unforgiveness, really needed to do some work. Unfortunately, my brother died unexpectedly. So I was really stuck. Definitely wasn't going to get an I'm sorry. What do you do? That's where I went on a deep search about forgiveness. Luckily, there are some great books out there by really smart people. I also went back to sacred text. I'm an interfaith reverend. What does that mean? It means I've studied all major religions. So I went back to all the major texts of the world religions. Good news, all of them believe that forgiveness is a good idea. But I really wanted more clarity on what forgiveness is. So I studied more deeper books on forgiveness and also studies like the Fetzer study. So that's why we're going to talk about what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. And I think that'll help clear it up for some of you. And it sure did for me. And it will help you along your, quote, forgiveness journey. So let's start. What is forgiveness? Forgiveness is a choice. And I'm very excited to say that. Just like it's a choice to pick up the unforgiveness. Forgiveness is a choice. Forgiveness is a choice to stop trying to control a situation and the people in it. Forgiveness is a choice to take responsibility for any hurt you caused through your actions, words, or expectations of others. Forgiveness is a choice to have healthy people and habits in your life. Wow. That is so much clearer for me. That was when I was able to put that down in a little list was much clearer. And I want to go through each one of those separately and kind of dig through that, get to the meat of it. And we will. Next, forgiveness, what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not forgetting what happened. Wow, that forgive and forget thing. Okay, let's put it bluntly. God can forgive and forget. Humans and elephants, not so much. We're going to get deeper into that. Forgiveness is not forgetting what happened. Forgiveness is not saying what happened was okay. Forgiveness is not letting the person out of justice or consequences. Forgiveness is not saying you will never feel sad or angry over the situation again. Another short list, I'm sure we could add more to it. And I want to get more nitty-gritty about the list too here in a second. There's a lot to forgiveness, but really it's a journey. Forgiveness is an inner journey because of an outer event. Really means what happened to us causes us to pick up the unforgiveness. But we really have to go inward to let go of that pain. And it's about us. It's really not about the other person. That was a light bulb moment for me. And I hope it might be a light bulb moment for you. We're definitely going to discuss that in depth in this podcast and in other podcasts. We're going to have amazing interviews with a lot of people who've had been on amazing forgiveness journeys themselves. All right, so we're going to start at the top of the list again. Forgiveness is a choice to stop trying to control a situation and the people in it. Okay, I don't know if it's because I'm a mom or just my personality, but I happen to know a lot of people. And especially when you're angry at somebody or you see them really messing up in life, it's very hard to stop trying to control a situation or the people in it. But that's part of forgiveness. You have to understand that you're taking a step back. You have to understand that you have no control over the situation. You need to back away. That's part of forgiveness. It is not for you to control. It's for you to let go of. Also, for you to separate from the pain. Otherwise, you're going to still be in it 2 feet in and up to your nose. That is not going to change the situation at all. Forgiveness is a choice to take responsibility for any hurt you cause through your actions, words, or expectations of others. Well, you're going to hear a lot of me talking to you about expectations. Expectations is huge. For example, when I talk about my family member, my brother, I had a lot of expectations of him. Well, he was my brother. I had expectations that he would be an amazing brother. He didn't live up to those expectations, which caused a lot of hurt and pain. Now, were those expectations valid? Sure they were. Well, to a point. He wasn't able to live up to that job description. He just wasn't. At some point, I knew that he wasn't. I needed to let him off the hook. I really did. But instead, I just kept getting hurt, angry, and disappointed. And my actions showed it. I let him know anytime he ever saw me that he didn't live up to those expectations. Now, I might not have used words to do it, but definitely my attitude showed it. He definitely had a rough life, and I could have been kinder to him. I should have taken responsibility for my actions. I should have been kinder, and I definitely needed to make amends. But it was easier for me to show that he was not living up to his end of the bargain. So I needed to definitely take responsibility for my actions. Usually, in any situation, you need to figure out whether you need to take responsibility for your actions. Understanding that in many situations, when something has happened to you, you might have not had anything to do with what happened to you, but you are definitely responsible for how you handle that situation. Clearly responsible for your actions. Yeah, that's a maturity thing. We all hear it. We all know about it. We tell our kids. But when you're hurt, we tend to forget that and we'll still lash out no matter how old you are. Forgiveness is a choice to have healthy people and healthy habits in our life. Yes, it is. Well, you can still forgive someone even if they're not healthy or are not doing healthy things. Really good example. Well, I was working with a wonderful young lady, and her sister was a drug addict. This was really sad situation. She loved her sister so much. Her sister had been in and out of drug rehabs. No matter how many times she helped her sister over and over again just disappointed her. She had a lot of expectations of her sister, just like we spoke above, but her sister didn't live up to her expectations. But most importantly, she had a really hard time letting her sister back in her life. Every time she did, her sister let her down. Plus, it just wasn't safe for her. She was afraid that if she forgave her sister, that meant that she had to let her sister back in her life. It didn't. It did not mean that at all. So when we went over these guidelines with her, she realized she could still love her sister, she could forgive her sister, and still have healthy boundaries. It was really a moment of joy for her. Forgiveness does that. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that wonderful? Forgiveness is the link between love and healing. Forgiveness offers so much, so many wonderful things for you. All right, so let's talk about what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Now, you hear this a lot. I know I hear this in all my workshops. I don't think there's one workshop that I have not heard this come up. Forgive and forget. Forgive and forget. Well, I don't know who could forgive and forget after somebody has hurt you really, really badly. I don't know if even the little things, if you truly forget that it happened, you just might choose to not let it bother you anymore, to truly let it go. And that's a great thing. But the bigger the thing is, I bet you didn't forget. Elephants and people, we tend to remember. And I think that's a good thing. God gives us a memory for a reason. It keeps us safe. Otherwise, we'd walk right back into the lion every time. Hey, and sometimes us human beings do that. We need to remember healthy boundaries. That is one reason why we do remember. Forgiveness and trust do not have to do with each other. Forgiveness is one thing, trust is another. We can forgive someone and still not trust them. We can forgive and the trust can be rebuilt. That's one reason we remember. Now, does forgiveness allow our hearts to soften? Yes, it does. Especially maybe to our spouse or maybe to our children, especially when they've spilled the milk the thousandth time. Of course, we forgive them. We love them. It's just milk. We forgive them. But for the big things, we need to remember so we don't get hurt. So forgiveness is not forgetting what happened. Forgiveness is not saying what happened was okay. Many times I hear a lot in my workshops, if I forgive them, it's going to tell that person that I condoned what they did. No, that's not the case. If you forgive someone, it doesn't mean that you condone what they did. It means that you are choosing to let go of the pain and the anger of the situation. Doesn't mean that you agree with their actions or their lifestyle or whatever's going on, but it does mean that you are choosing that you don't want the pain anymore. And that's great. That's great news. But it doesn't mean that you have to agree with whatever it was that caused you the pain. Forgiveness is not letting the person out of justice or consequences. This is a big, big deal. Forgiveness doesn't let the person out of justice, whether that be legal justice or social justice. Very important. So if we forgive someone, it doesn't mean that the legal system isn't in charge of their stuff, right? If a murderer murdered someone, let the judicial system handle their business, and it should. And if you need social justice or consequences for someone's actions, let that happen also. And that's the healthy boundaries. If you have an irritating family member that is not healthy to be around, then healthy boundaries. But this is the part that I really want to emphasize. Unforgiveness jail. If you are choosing to put yourself in unforgiveness jail, you need to let yourself out. That means if you are choosing to keep the anger in your heart, mind, and soul, and you keep condemning someone in your heart, mind, and soul for what they have done, whether it be to you or to someone else or in a situation, you're the one that's in jail. You are in unforgiveness jail. So let forgiveness happen and let yourself out of jail. Of course, it's in your heart, mind, and soul, but you really should let yourself out. Forgiveness is not saying you will never feel sad again or anger over a situation. I wish forgiveness was a magic eraser and that you could forgive and forget and that would magically get away all those feelings. It does help. Forgiveness really does. Sometimes we have to kind of practice forgiveness over and over again, and you do get better at it. You really, really do. It is a journey or a wild, rapid ride, but you do get better at it, and you learn to separate from the pain. And when you do, joy sneaks in, empathy sneaks in, and you do change your perspective. I think that's a real big key. When you change your perspective, your feelings change. You get a different view of the whole situation. I know I did. When I was able to start seeing my brother's life differently, I changed my perspective. I also gained a perspective on my life. I became more grateful for my life, and I felt empathy for my brother and what a tough life he had. Everybody comes from their own belief system, their set of beliefs, and how they approach a problem. We all come together, and unfortunately, we don't all agree. I wish we did. I know that if everybody did everything the way I wanted them to do everything, we would get along just fine. But that doesn't happen. And no one's ever yelled at me for 20 minutes and had me change my mind. I doubt anybody's ever yelled at you for 20 minutes and had you change your mind. I know, I wish we could tell the politicians, but it doesn't work that way. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that we need to understand that we all come from different places and different spaces. And because of that, we're going to pick up unforgiveness because we're going to come with expectations. And those expectations, all unsaid and said, makes us butt heads. And when we do, we get our feelings hurt and we cause unforgiveness. So we need forgiveness. We need to understand what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. That we can choose to stop trying to control a situation. We can choose to take responsibility for our actions. And we can choose to have healthy boundaries. What's most important, we can choose to have forgiveness as a new path for problem solving. We can have forgiveness in our life and give space for joy. And forgiveness lets us be more sensitive for expectations in others and in ourselves. And the choice of forgiveness lets you see the blessings of an imperfect life. The choice of forgiveness reminds each of us that we are in need of forgiveness ourselves, that we're not perfect, none of us. Wow, that's probably the biggest message of all. Well, understanding that forgiveness is another word for letting it go. It really, really is. Mother Teresa said that people are unrealistic, illogical, self-centered. Love them anyways. And you can do that if you use forgiveness as the true link between love and healing. Thank you for joining me for the Forgiveness Solution. And again, please like the podcast, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
I wish you bluebirds in the spring to hear your song, a song to sing, and then a kiss more than this. I wish you love.